Right, so
Thank
now
you.
we are going to kind of go into some of the questions right now.
Hmm.
So, all right, I will go try to get to all to everyone's. First question would be: is the Dolby Atmos renderer able to work with all versions of Pro Tools or only certain versions?
I okay. So the renderer must, if you're talking about a production suite, right, it has got to work on a Mac. If you don't want to work on a Mac, then you have to have spread two systems, and you could run the Dolby Atmos mastering suite on Windows and then spread it out to two different systems. However, the problem, because Pro Tools actually had at the later versions, I think since 2018 or something like this, had the 3D renderer built in, a 3D panel built in, and then that will work. It will, with some tweaking and some older versions of the renderer, and you have to date back a few years. And if you really want to run, I think probably the Pro Tools that will work will be somewhere along the Pro Tools 8 or 7, maybe 8 onwards. You will be able to kind of get it working, but I wouldn't know exactly, and there's too many variables. So I would say please contact me and we can try it out if you have an older version of Pro Tools. But anything from like 2018 onwards is no problem because it comes with a three-dimensional panel. If it doesn't, again, there are send and return plugins that we can do to do the panning and stuff like this. I have to find the installer of that generations to do that, because ultimately Pro Tools Atmos came out in 2012. So anything from 2012 onwards should be able to get it to work. And if I remember correctly, we were at 2012, we were kind of still using Pro Tools 8. I would say around Pro Tools 8, you should be able to get it working. It's just that we have to use older versions of the installers and stuff.
Hopefully that answers your question, right? The second question would be: is this something that we can use with the head tracking headphones?
Yeah, of course. With head tracking, it's more of a VR thing and stuff like this. Technically, you can enjoy Apple Music with head tracking. I think there's an option in iPhones that allows you to turn it on and off. Personally, I don't really enjoy this. I only heard it once or twice. Maybe I'm more of a static person than trying to move my head around this. The few times I've tried it, have got me quite disorientated. It's really fun when you play games, and when you turn around and the things really come from a different direction. But just sitting around like listening to music, and every time I turn my head, the dialogues are moving or the voice is moving. I don't particularly enjoy it. Yeah, so this will probably be my thoughts really.
Third, next question is, I think you actually explained it, but just maybe a quick recap lah. Okay, the question actually goes: can we broadcast or stream rendered binaural output from the Dolby
Sweet.
Atmos production suite? That's actually two parts. So if yes, so does the listener need to have an encoder to experience Atmos? But I think you kind of answered it earlier, but maybe you want to maybe just elaborate this again.
Sure. Yeah. Very good idea. I actually just went through this same question like on Monday with somebody. The thing is, yes, you can do that technically. I have to indemnify Dolby that to say that the Dolby Atmos production suite, the renderer output, was meant for a monitoring output. It was not meant for a live streaming output. So I'm not sure if this person is from broadcast or anything, but I think in broadcast, we do quantify broadcast equipment. There's always dual power supply, main backup, and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to do that, technically you can. The listener will not need an encoder or to experience Atmos, but they are essentially experiencing the binaural output. They can experience the binaural with any headphones and anything. Just make sure that when you transmit this binaural, you don't end up squashing them to mono, and make sure that you get the best bandwidth, because in binaural stereo, there are many, many little subtleties that cannot be lost. A lot of binaural information is actually in the high frequencies, and if you're using a codec that removes high frequencies, you kind of have to look at that. So I would suggest some experimentation on the bandwidth you want to transmit this. Again, the Dolby Suite is not designed to do that. I will recommend some 514 encoding and then send it out to the DD Plus and then get it out to the streams and having people enjoy it. The reason for this is because it's ultimately binaural, so you really have to put a sign in that content to say that this is binaural. Please use headphones to listen to it, because it would sound kind of weird with speakers, and people will hear his speakers and go like, that's funny, stuff like this. So you really would have to have that sign. However, you have done it the way I've kind of shown it earlier, like how Jay said, like I've explained how live Atmos is done. Then what happens is they get a Dolby device that can decode this. It will actually decode it correctly. So if the guy was just hearing off his mobile phone without headphones, it will just play back stereo. If the guy were to hear it off his mobile phone in headphones, you will do the binaural. So it becomes adaptable, and that stream can technically even go down into a home theater system to do that. So that is more of the proper way to do it. However, that requires setup. So please contact me, and I look after this whole live broadcasting also, especially in Malaysia. We can explore possibilities to that. But if you want to do a simple stereo broadcast and binaural, and you want people to enjoy Atmos just by binaural, I will say two things. Before these two things, I will say I won't encourage it, because I will do it the Dolby way of the 514. But two things. One is please have a backup, because again, the Dolby suite was not designed to provide a feed, and if anything happens, I can't guarantee that it's going to survive. And also the suite will depends on the computer you're running on and how much mixing you're doing when you're doing this streaming. If your mix is pretty much static, maybe, but you have a lot of movements or a lot of levels moving down, or you put in a lot of processing, there will be limitations how you do this. So please have a backup. And two, please make sure that they wear the headphones, because it's going to sound weird if they don't wear headphones.
That's a great answer over there. Okay, we have a couple more, actually a lot more actually. So let's go quickly through it. So this one's a long one. This came from Shafiq. Shafiq, is this Ahmad Shafiq? I'm not sure. L Acoustics, LISA. Lisa, it's an immersive format for live sound. So since music production's going to Atmos in the future, artists and musicians may want to bring this same immersive experience to the live shows. Yeah. So will there be an integration between Dolby and live sound immersive formats?
Great question though. This guy is really in the know. I've not really experienced the Lisa, but I know what it's about. I actually have experienced DNB Soundscape. I would say the principles of it is similar. I know there has been talks, but I can't really share much information. I would say that Dolby is looking into this. And I don't know what information I can share, what information I cannot share, so I rather not share it. And then after I get hold against it, I will say, yes, Dolby is looking into this, and you are right. I think this is an important immersive experience, simply because I think by the time COVID is over, everybody will want to go back, and after everybody go back, everybody will want another level of experience, because they will appreciate live shows so much. I personally miss live shows myself. There's some rush in live shows. So having an immersive format that works both in live shows and both in the living room, it's something that can be very, very valuable. And all I can say at this point is Dolby is looking into it. And if there's one day you can invite me back and I can share, I will be more than happy to talk about this and how it actually turned out eventually.
That's a great question. Oh yes, it is Ahmad Shafiq. Yeah. So maybe next time in the future you mix something for Yuna in immersive audio, man. Okay, I got this short question. This is cool. MESA EQ in the mastering suite. I'm not exactly sure what that is. MESA EQ.
I only know it as a Lake EQ. I don't know it as a MESA EQ. My impression of MESA EQ is something else, so I'm not so sure about that. So the EQ is just for speaker calibration, yes.
This one I think will be. It's a good question because this is coming from Cielto. Question goes, is it possible to send a deliverable file to a remote client for 7.14 QC quality control on a consumer system, or us trying to gauge the immersive translation on soundbars, etc.? So this is more from a mastering perspective, because Cielto is a mastering engineer.
And how to listen the references within the system without having to take it and output according. Oh, okay. Yes, it is possible to send a 7.1.4 split track file. The renderer will create that file for you for that mix or that movie. Only problem is to send it remotely. 7.1 7.4. I think that to send it across remotely is going to be an issue because at this point I don't have a device in my head that can send 12 channels of audio very efficiently unless you actually have long 100-meter cables to your friend's place and you can send it analog or some kind of digital transmission like a long Dante or fiber. But yes, you can do that. You can actually create a 714 file with left track, right track, center track, and they can find a way to play back on the system remotely. The issue is not creating the 714, is how you're going to transmit that 714. I think if you have a solution for that, yes, it can be done. Or us trying to gauge the immersive translation on a soundbar, etc. Okay, you don't have to gauge the immersive translation. You can use the renderer to export an MP4 file. That MP4 file is an encoded DD plus Atmos file of your mix. So when that file is exactly what the consumer products will receive to playback Atmos. So all you have to do is put it on a thumb drive, plug it to the TV that's connected to the soundbar, or plug it to a Blu-ray player that is connected to the soundbar and play the Blu-ray player or use the TV's media player to play it. It will send the Atmos information into the soundbar. The soundbar will light up and says this is Dolby Atmos and you will hear it. So you can totally gauge, or no need to gauge, you can totally know how it would translate on the soundbar.
If I'm getting this right, that means what you send to the consumer is that MP4 file?
Yes, and that is the encoded file. Like I mentioned, right, Dolby is also taking care of the distribution.
Right.
That will be the exact encoded file that the consumer would have received from Apple or received from the services like Netflix.
So you don't have to actually send a 7.14 multi-channel file, right?
Yeah, technically you can if you want to send the 714 file. Isn't that on top of my head now?
Yeah.
You will come to me. I just don't know how to do that. I mean, I can send 5.1 very easily. Listen to plugin can do that very easily. But yeah, I can't think of another way to do it, like from a consumer point of view. Like a professional way, I mean, I work like there's all this remote production. We are sending 64 channels of audio across the world very easily. Like UEFA was done that way. How they actually moved from stadiums to stadium, but there was actually a remote production kind of way to do it. So they are sending the inputs to a fixed venue to mix it. But to do that to a client, sort of a consumer-based system, I don't know how to do it. But we can generate a 714 PCM wave file if you need it. To end off his questions is like how to listen to references within the system without having to take in analog outputs of consumer decoders. Because the consumers will not, because it's not a channel-based output, at this point, we don't have flexible way to do it. It will always be carried by our codecs, and there is no other way to do it unless you can find a way to crunch it into a HDMI stream and send it to the decoders and to do that. Otherwise, it's pretty much just using a Blu-ray player to play back. It's very easy. I've done this so many times. Like just take my Atmos mix, right? Put export an MP4. It will be a black video, and that soundtrack will be just the Atmos soundtrack. And I just put in a Blu-ray. I'll just watch black video, but I can hear the whole thing. Yeah, and I've done it on TVs and stuff like this. So it's not too difficult. If you have any problem, just ask me. I can just show you how to do it. Yeah.
Okay, from Elton Collins asks also related to mastering. So in the traditional sense of mastering musical content, right, from creation to deliverables, are there loudness specifications or deliverable guidelines or certifications?
So with musical content, right, there is no real standard way of mastering Atmos at this point other than creating the master file in the traditional sense of mastering for music, whereby you try to squeeze out the headroom and tweaks the overall EQs and stuff like this. It doesn't work so much in Atmos this way, but it can. So what they have been doing is they are mastering the bits and they're mastering the objects and then making sure that they come together nicely. So you can do that kind of mastering. But if you're saying that just create a stereo master from a stereo mix, it doesn't work that way because the mix is not rendered until it reaches the playback device. So you can't put a bus compressor to kind of squeeze the groove out or squeeze the maximum loudness out. There are loudness specification for the delivery of Atmos, and is at minus 18 LUFS, which is minus 18 LUFS ITU 1770-4. You can just deliver at the mix. The Atmos mix has to be clocked at minus 18. The true peak has to be clocked as minus 1. So this is the standard that they are adopting. There is no certification. Apple Music there's no mustard for iTunes thing anymore. The guidelines are pretty much the LUFS and the stuff. Different record labels have different guidelines that they want, and that's really specific. So what I would suggest is, I think that will take me another hour to go through the guidelines. Please contact me if you have any questions, or if you are doing a job at Atmos and you are given a set of delivery specs that at some parts you don't understand. I'm very happy to answer your questions. And just to let you know that some record companies can get very serious about these guidelines. It might get to a point where there's a bit of struggle of maintaining creative intent while trying to meet the guidelines. And if that happens, I'm the person that has to mitigate this, because we are kind of trying to shape the technology to make everybody happy. So please feel free to contact me on these things, because it's still kind of new, and we are still finding our way. And even the record companies are finding a way, and even Apple are also finding their way. Things might even change moving on 2 to 3 years. So yeah, just let me know. And
So things are very fluid lah, right? Yeah.
at this point, yeah.
Elton, also just to continue, so do playback systems like soundbars have this DSP to account for room size and surface differences?
Yes. Some of the soundbars or even AVRs these days have very extensive DSP. So I know there's a series of AVRs, there's a few AVR models that come with a paper mic, a mic with a paper mic stand, and you can run your own calibration, auto calibration, just put it at your sofa and you'll run all that frequency sweeps, noise, figure the delays out for you in a multi-channel setup. I've seen soundbar that also do that and actually account for the time differences between the room, and surface differences maybe not so much. But if tonal differences caused by surface reflections, yes, it will take into account some EQs to make the speaker's response as linear as possible in your particular room, i.e. taking out the acoustics effects of the room. They do have this in typical soundbars and AVRs today.
That is particular to the specific manufacturer, right? It's not something that Dolby implements on their end, right?
The manufacturer decides. However, because we work directly with the OEMs, for the OEMs to have a product with the Dolby Atmos logo on it, they do pass some very stringent tests. They do have to meet certain levels of frequency response. We actually provide some EQ DSPs to them. Like some AVR gets our Dolby surround up mixing so that you can hear everything in surround at least. I think that we have been doing that for a while. I would say there will be some percentage of Dolby influence in that calibration. For the OEM, that's what we do, but we do certified studios and we have a whole set of requirements to certified studios in terms of acoustic response and stuff like this. And we do take some of that knowledge and put it in the OEM. Those things have some form of Dolby influence in them. How much I wouldn't know. It's very specific to the product, but a lot of it follows Dolby guidelines, and I do know some set of the guidelines, and it has something to do with frequency responses and stuff like this, making sure that Dolby Atmos always sounds good. So this is that Dolby difference, whereby we are even talking to the playback manufacturers to make sure that our technologies and our experience are translated correct.
That's good to know. Yeah, that Dolby really takes care of everything. I have a question. This is a question from me. I think I heard you address this in some other webinars before. This is related to music, because now with, especially Apple Music has come into the spatial audio playing field. So there is definitely a rush to create more Dolby Atmos content in terms of from music lah. What should we do if we have, let's say, from pre-existing old catalog of stereo mixers, and then they want to convert this into and submit this and then becomes an Apple Music spatial audio? Is it just a matter of just taking your stereo mix and just running it through the renderer? Does that in essence turn it into Dolby Atmos?
No, you can't do that. That's one of the guidelines that Apple had put in. Like Apple Music actually will scan for immersive information in the mix. So if you just plonk a stereo mix into a stereo bed and just create a fake object and then send it up to thing, they will detect it and fail the QC and not put it on Apple. Of course, there are several ways. One of the interests with record companies at this point is to create old masters into immersive audio, especially the legendary songs. I mean, obviously, when Apple Music launched this, they used Marvin Gaye's song, right, with the narration like, okay, this is mono, this is stereo. Now listen to Dolby Atmos spatial audio, and everybody goes, wow, you can hear the clear, distinct difference between the guitar, the acoustic guitars, and the yeah, I think I've heard that too many times. So what happened is, obviously, if you can find a multi-track, go for it. You know, the multi-tracks, you can re-look at the multi-tracks and start mixing in a three-dimensional perception, like I mentioned earlier. The HQ, they're talking to a lot of mixing engineers in the US, and one of the stories I heard was that there was this, I'm not sure if you heard this, I think everybody knows this jazz record called Miles Davis, A Kind of Blue, right? I mean, that's the most, like, everybody has heard that record at some point, and many people have digested it and understood it in a certain way. So what they did was they actually reamped the whole record because it was a direct to two-track recording. So the multi-track didn't exist at the point. I think the whole album was recorded with 3 mics, not exactly Decca 3, but 3 mics. So it was a direct to, this is more old school than old school. This is called direct mastering, which is stereo 2-track mixed straight into the record, and they just made the record this way, and you have to mix it like a live mix. I'm not sure if people in this call will understand. That was even more old school than quarter-inch tape. So A Kind of Blue was just done that way. It was a live performance mix direct to direct. So they just took the stereo track, reamp it in a very nice echo chamber, and the results came back amazing because they felt like they were in the room with Miles Davis when he played that record with his band and everything. So have a listen to it. This is what I was told. This is one of the ways to start listening to old recordings that couldn't find a multi-track, or trying to bring Atmos to the older stereo recordings. A lot of this is also happening with some of the classical recordings. And I'm also working with a university in Singapore, trying to get Atmos in the classical recordings and stuff like this. So it's very interesting because with classical, it's always staged. You want to bring the listener into that stage. And the dean of that university says, I want people to hear it the way I hear it, because the dean is a professor and he's a conductor himself. So I actually recorded his performance in my past, and he was a conductor, and he was sold to Dolby Atmos because he believed that people can finally hear what he hears as a conductor of an orchestra. And I think that's a very valuable proposition, because it takes so much. In my lifetime, I can't conduct an orchestra. I know that, but I would love to be able to stand there beside the conductor to hear it. So if Dolby Atmos can bring me that experience, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, so I think that's a important point, especially for music mixers, to know that you just can't just take your stereo mix, right, and just do that. Yeah, exactly. That was correct. I heard you speak on this previously. Just wanted to make sure that the rest of the members would hear that as well. Wow, we've got a couple more. Are you still good? Okay, because it's already.
I'm good. It's fine. I mean,
okay.
I'm like I said, and I really mean it. Like, I'm just very happy that I'm talking to a bunch of audio engineers. We will be friends, like sitting in a mama store, drinking kopi and talking about this, and it will take whole night because this is our passion. And so I'm fully happy to do this.
Okay, all right. So let's go on from Tanvi. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. How can you create ADM files if I purchase a DAPS production suite? If I want to make an MP3 from that ADM, how do I do that?
Okay, so I think first you got to understand what ADM files are. ADM file is actually a WAV file that carries 128 tracks of audio up to and your bed and object tracks with the metadata separated. So this is an open, sort of like a standard WAV files that can load into devices that understand Dolby Atmos or get encoded and then playback as Dolby Atmos on a later play device. So to do that on DAPS, you can. All you have to do is create record the master, that means create the Dolby Atmos master file, which is predominantly what the DAPS does. One of the big things, like I mentioned earlier, the DAPS is the heart of the mix. It creates the master file. It also does the monitoring. To create the ADM files, you have to record the master file. And after you record the master file, you can just go to files and export audio, and one of the options will be ADM files, and you can export that. If you want to make the ADM from ADM to MP3, technically you can't, and you wouldn't want to do that because you can't play back a normal ADM file. Although it's a WAV file, it is actually just using a WAV container to carry the files. As you know, the WAV container is very dynamic. It can be a mono, stereo, 5.1. Like ADM is a 128 track interleaf WAV file. So you have one file but carrying 128 tracks of audio, and with all the pending metadata separated. So it is a complex format that at this moment, no simple player can play it. The only player that can play it that I know very simply is the Dolby Atmos production suite. So if you get an ADM WAV file and you want to play it, I would suggest, get the trial of the Dolby Atmos production suite to do it. What you would do if you want to make an MP3, it would be to actually load the ADM-B wave onto a DAPS and export some kind of wave file that is of a channel-based format. That means MP3 has to be stereo or mono. It can't go 5.1 anyway, or can it? I don't think so. Yeah. So I think MP3 is mainly mono and stereo. You can pair three sets of MP3 together to do 5.1, but you can't guarantee the sync, if I'm not wrong. So what you can do is use the DAPS to load the ADM-B wave, export a normal mono or stereo wave, and then use some converter to convert that to MP3. Yeah.
But would you lose all the immersive content that way? Yeah, into an MP3?
That render that you do is just fixed there. So it's not flexible anymore. It's not adaptable or scalable. You can use the DAPS from the ADM to actually export some kind of binaural wave. Like it's just a stereo file, but the audio is binaural rendered. So you will get the three-dimensional effects as long as you put in the headphones.
Right.
But that is done and done. Like you can't take that file, the MP3 file, and then go play on a home theater system and expect it to play back 714. It will not play back 714. Yeah, so you can actually take the ADM file, export the MP4, and play back on the thing, but you have to go 2 steps back to the ADM file.
Yeah, so basically it's like what you explained earlier, right? With Cielto's question, that using the MP4 method, that would be that would be the best way.
That will be the best way. Yes, that will be the best way. And our MP4 is our version of the MP3, if you know what I mean. MP3 is a lossy codec for stereo music. Dolby Digital Plus is a lossy codec for Atmos music. That's pretty much it.
Now the next question from Ivan. Are there alternatives to working beyond 128 tracks apart from going to the Dolby Master Suite? Working on TV shows usually end up beyond 128 tracks. Oh, okay, right.
No, there's no alternative working beyond 128 tracks for the moment. And again, remember the first 10 tracks for a bit. You have to sum everything up to be 128 tracks. And to be absolutely honest with you, I have not really seen a session that had full busy 128 tracks. Because it's time-based, right? So you can use one track and put, if let's say they don't all happen at the same time, you know what I mean? You only need that 128 tracks if this one thing happened in that particular instance in time. And there are 128 different elements to make this sound. To be absolutely honest, if I had to do that, I would have to bring down a lot of my faders because you have, 128 tracks summed together at one instance is going to create something really, really loud. Not sure if there's real headroom to handle it. So the 128 tracks was something designed very much earlier in terms of the feasibility of equipment and stuff like this. So it was stuck at 128 tracks. And I totally understand many shows end up way beyond 128 tracks. We just have to find the commonality and sum them to in 128 tracks.
From George had a question. What's the difference between the Pro Tools renderer and the free renderer for other DAWs?
Okay. So that's a great question. And okay, so the Pro Tools has does come with some form of way of rendering. It does do a 712 render as a backup plan in case our renderer is to fail. Some DAWs like Nuendo comes with a built-in renderer. Same with Same with DaVinci Resolve. It's a built-in renderer. So what we do is we actually give them a system development kit, and then they write the software based on our codes, and then they create a render within the software itself. There is some trend or some saying that this is probably the way forward to go. However, I must stress that only with the Dolby Atmos renderer, whether it was the production suite or the mastering suite, you will get the full features. Depending which one you're talking about, there are some limitations here and there. It might affect you, it might not affect you. So this is something you have to decide for yourself. I would recommend to at least buy a Dolby Atmos production suite because it has the full feature if you want to really check something. For example, the free renderers or the ProTools renderer don't come with a loudness metering. One of the biggest challenges when Atmos was going to Netflix and streaming devices is, as engineers from broadcasting will know, everybody needs loudness ratings to pass QC and stuff like this. So because of that, Dolby actually took it upon ourselves to put in a loudness rating, a loudness meter inside, and is actually capturing Atmos as a loudness meter. It's so far accurate, and so far all the deliveries I've done, if the loudness analysis on the renderer is within the thing, there's no discrepancy at the QC. That means the QC don't see it otherwise and fail it. So if you use the other renderer, you may not get that loudness feature that is very helpful. You may not need it. Maybe it says, I actually trusted I have maybe an external meter, I don't know, or another plug-in meter, I don't know, or I have new gen that can correct. Oh no, you can't correct it with new gen. You may have other ways to get the loudness meter, but I just find that for $299, the Dolby Atmos production suite with the loudness meter and full features makes it very worthwhile. Yep.
All right. So you heard that himself, right? $299 USD. That's quite affordable, actually. Yeah, considering that, yeah.
And it's full featured, it's like forever, and full feature is not yearly. It just doesn't have the EQs, and it doesn't allow you to run it remotely. That's the two main differences.
One more from Kevin. Hey, Kevin Chan. Okay, would Atmos mixing render Dolby E obsolete in broadcast applications?
Dolby is still used by quite a lot of people. Dolby E was a contribution codec that was designed to carry 8 channels of audio. With Atmos, we are not going into 8 channels of audio anymore. So for Atmos Live, we actually developed ED2, and ED2 has to be used as a pair so that you get 8 channels on one of the pairs. So you would have 16 channels of audio, which is basically like the 514 will take up 10 channels, and then you have another few 6 that you can use them to work out different presentations, different mic locations, different commentators. So we have 8. That's currently the practice. Whether you render it obsolete, it really depends on the user. I said, I would feel that there is some use for it. Depends how much you want to go. Like for someone that is looking at archives, for contribution archives, and someone that just needs 5.1 and not going to Atmos, then obviously Dolby is still very, very good. Obviously, with Dolby and the new technology, we would obviously focus more on Dolby Atmos. Yeah, that will be my answer. But if it's useful for you, by all means use it. I do have a Dolby an E encoder myself. I actually have a 571 CD in my home, but it still works when it works.
So we got one more question, I think, and this one is from Roseanne. Roseanne wants to ask.
Okay, thanks, man. Hey, George, thanks for this, man. It's been really cool. Quick question on the fixed bits, right? On say Pro Tools, they only allow you to go on 7.1.2, right, as the first 10 channels. How do you route the other 0.2 or 0.4 if you have a 7.1.4 or 0.6 system? Do you need to use up your objects to in place of that?
So again, this is the bed, right? And this is not the monitoring path. So let me show you my slide again. because this is a very important question for me to answer. I just have to stress this again. This is the bed, and this is not a channel based. It is not designed to be a monitoring path. You can see it as 712, and if you take 7.1 and you move it to the renderer, the 7.1 will go to the 7.1 of your monitoring. But there is a difference in the 0.2 because the maximum bit that we allow in Dolby Atmos is a 7.1.2 bit. That means you cannot go up to 7.1.4 because we simply don't allow it in 10 tracks. So what you would have to do, your bed can only allow you to put something on the heights on the left side of the ceiling or the right side of the ceiling. So just remember, in your monitoring, if you put something on the 0.2 bed, on the left side, the two speakers will kena. That means the two speakers will actually produce the same sound. If you had three speakers on the ceiling, the three speakers will produce the same sound. That means either left ceiling or right ceiling. If you want any definition of moving front speaker and rear speaker, you have to rely on the objects. You cannot do it in a bed because the maximum bed that will allow you to do is up to 0.2 only.
Yeah, excellent, man. Thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah. Just remember, this can get a little bit confusing because Pro Tools actually maxed out at 7.1.2 and they use 7.1.2 to generate a monitoring in case the renderer fails. So this sometimes leads to some kind of confusion. But just to remember, if you are thinking of bed, the bed just goes out to 0.2 like period. It just cannot do anything because it's the 10 tracks. And if you want movement on the ceilings, right, you have to use an objects to move it front and back of the ceiling.
Thanks for the question, man, Rosan. That's really
yeah. That's an excellent question,
yeah.
and it shows true understanding and somebody has really tried this before. Yeah. I think James has a question. I'm looking at the chat.
Yeah, okay, yes. Right. So sorry, I may have missed out. So James was asking, what is the cheapest Dolby Atmos soundbar currently available in the market?
Okay, on paper, it is I think $250 US, and I can't remember the brand or the thing. I cannot remember. I have to check that out for you. But I know that the on paper we were told that the cheapest soundbar is about $250 US to $300 US. If you are looking for a soundbar and with Dolby Atmos, I would recommend something that has 512 or 514 kind of setup. It might cost a little more, but I find it well worth it. Let me explain to you why. To provide a cheap soundbar, obviously the size of soundbar is smaller and maybe the number of speakers will be reduced. So what they do is they use a sound beaming technology to move the sound around you or in the ceiling. The sound beaming technology, I think some of you are live sounds people, you would know sound beaming really works, and we can really steer sound if you really wanted to, more than one speaker, of course. The limitations I see with sound beaming is the sweet spot is very, very small. So if you are sitting there and you don't move, you already hear it. But the moment you kind of move like a meter to the left, you are definitely out of that beaming. It might just the sound just maybe doesn't just make sense, and it's gonna sound a bit weird. So I would suggest that get something like a 514 soundbar. It comes with remote rear speakers or wireless rear speakers, all the better. It will just give you a very, very convincing home theater kind of experience with not too much money. It's not as cheap as $300 US. It might you're looking at about $1,000 US, but the experience you get out of it, I would say, is well worth it. And I have many times shocked many people, or even like, I have to do training to like Samsung and all this, or JB, some of the companies, the soundbars, when playback and set right, just sounds super. Recently, I got challenged because one of my engineer acquaintance was boasting about a Sonos soundbar. The Sonos soundbar also sounds amazing. The Samsung sound amazing. The JBL sound amazing. I mean, I'm quite a fan of soundbars today, thanks to Dolby Atmos also, because I understand the fact that for a consumer that is not really into audio, to go and place 12 speakers all around the living room, having to, do all that is too much. I don't expect like my friends to be able to do that, but
it's hard to convince my wife to do that.
Yeah, I have to be very careful on the wife part. But I totally understand, because I have a wife too, to say, okay, never mind, let's drill a hole in the ceiling and put a ceiling speaker and all this. It's just too much. And even the cable itself is just too much. And by the time all that is done, but to say that let's just walk into the shops, pick up a soundbar, plug a HDMI cable and a power cable, turn everything on and they all sync wirelessly and you just get home theater effect and it's loud and you really get the immersive sound feel and everything. It just blows me away. And I've heard the Sony soundbar, Samsung soundbar. I do train them about Dolby Atmos as well. JBL soundbar, the Sonos soundbar, they all sound really, really good. Sennheiser also had a soundbar, and based on virtualization, there's so many speakers on there also. Go for a try on that and have a listen. I'm actually a very big fan of that. And like I said, recently I got challenged a lot because a studio engineer was having some argument with another studio engineer about some soundbar, and they were expecting me to say, oh yeah, of course soundbar won't sound as good as monitor speakers and stuff like this. I admit to that, and monitor speakers are a lot more expensive for one speaker anyway. So but I still very much enjoy the experience I'm getting from soundbar. In fact, I'm really a big fan of soundbar, and I have kind of set up soundbar, tuned them a little bit, and blown many people away. And everybody, I've seen that face looked at me so many times like, oh my God, this looks just sound amazing for such a simple setup. Yeah, so I would just urge everyone to try it. I won't suggest the cheapest one. Just try a 5141 or 5121 first. Get what the potential is, and then decide later on your budget what you want to spend on the soundbar. That was what I would advise, actually.
And,
I think James has another question that says, can you test the MP4 file like you mentioned on a PS4? I am not sure about this, but what I understand is either PS4 or PS5 does not have that Dolby thing inside yet, so it will not decode the Dolby Atmos information. It may probably already have Dolby Digital in some way, so it will decode some form of 5.1, but it may not read the Atmos information. I have to double check on that. Yes, the disc on the PS4 will play a Blu-ray. I am not sure. I have to check. I know PS5 doesn't really support it yet, so I'm not sure about PS4. But I know I have a PS3 personally, so I know the PS3 will take the 5.1 Dolby decoded. I have to check on that. If you are really serious of finding out, please email me, and then I will find my colleague on the PS side of the business to take care of you. I know the Xboxes do it. I just not so sure about the PS in terms of Atmos, but I know PS3 onwards already have Dolby Digital, so it will actually decode up to 5.1.
We've actually come to the we've actually passed the time for our meeting. But first of all, I want to just say thank you so much. Right, we want to express our thanks and our gratitude to Geoffrey for giving us this wonderful, amazing presentation. Right, thank you for spending your time with us. I think we all found it very, very fascinating, very, very informative as well. And on behalf of the AES community here in Malaysia, we want to say a big thank you to you. Officially, we will wrap this the monthly Mixer meeting. Once again, this is Geoffrey's contact. If you want to ask more questions in depth, you can get in touch with Geoffrey. You can always email him there. Right. So now. Geoffrey, once again, thank you so much. All right, we really appreciate it.